Welcome to Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast with Alexia Leachman, the weekly 9-month podcast to help parents-to-be look forward to their fear-free childbirth. Alexia is a pregnancy and head trash clearance coach and the author of Fear-Free Childbirth, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy and a Positive, Pain-Free Birth. As a mum who's had 2 fear-free and pain-free births, Alexia wants to share with you how she overcame her pregnancy and childbirth fears so that you can look forward to having a fear-free birth too. Over the 9-month life of this podcast, Alexia will be sharing some real-life stories from mums and dads, insights into the latest childbirth research, inspiring tales from birth professionals, and some tips and techniques for clearing your fears and stresses. If you would like to receive a free chapter from her book, then head over to fearfreechildbirth.com, where you can also sign up for her email series, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy. But now, it's time for the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, on today's show, I'm going to be sharing with you another positive birth stories. I know how much you are loving listening to these positive birth stories, and I want to thank you for the reviews and the comments and the emails that you're sending me, because I know these birth stories really help you, and I know they're helping to shift your thinking, your feelings, your perspective, so that you can really go into your birthing experience with feelings of positivity and really getting rid of the fear. So I'm so pleased to be able to bring you another positive birth story. Now, today I'm going to be sharing a story from Shakira Akabusi. Now, if you're from the UK, you might recognise that surname because, yes, she is the daughter of the former UK athlete and gold medalist Kriss Akabusi, and she's a fitness trainer and a commentator and fitness journalist. So she's going to be sharing with us her pregnancy journey and her positive birth story. But before I go into sharing all that, I just want to sort of share with you a little bit of an update on how the podcast is going. And actually, it's going brilliantly. I'm totally amazed and flabbergasted and overwhelmed by the fact that we hit nearly 22,000 downloads last week of the podcast, which I cannot believe at all. It's just amazing. And of course, if you listen to last week's show, then you'll know that the podcast is a finalist in the UK Podcasting Awards in the Kids and Family category. And I'm going to be finding out this weekend how we did. So if you want to find out, then tune in next week. Of course, I'll be sharing details from my Twitter account direct on Saturday, because I'll be at the awards ceremony. I was actually booked to go to this conference before I knew there were some awards, so it's very lucky that I'm going to be there anyway, which is great. So yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Alexia L and see how I do. And of course, if you want to tweet me and wish me luck and help to calm my nerves as I'm sitting there waiting for the results, then feel free to send me a tweet on Saturday night, UK time. That'll be UK time, because the awards ceremony will be happening in Manchester, which is here in the UK, not far from where I live, thankfully. So yeah, I'm going to be really hoping that I'm going to be sharing some great news next week. But of course, it's great news anyway, because I just cannot believe that the podcast has made it to the finals. Anyway, enough of that. So now I'm going to hand over in a minute to when I spoke to Shakira. Now, the chat with Shakira is just brilliant for so many reasons, because, as I mentioned at the beginning, Shakira is a personal trainer and a fitness coach and a fitness journalist. So she comes into her pregnancy being super fit. Now, I know, we're not all super fit, but many of you listening are super fit and want to be able to maintain that fitness through your pregnancy. But more importantly, maybe get your fitness back quickly after birth as well. So she talks all about that, how she handled her fitness throughout the pregnancy, and then how she started getting back into exercise, what she did after birth. So there's all that stuff that we talk about. But she also talks, of course, about her pregnancy journey and how she was completely and utterly terrified about the birth. She was completely delighted that she was pregnant, but yes, she had fears around the birth. And so listening to how she overcame those fears and dealt with those fears is really interesting. Now, Shakira chose to have an epidural for her birth, and she chose to have that from the outset. So it's going to be really interesting for you to hear a birth story that isn't a natural birth story, because so far a lot of the birth stories I've shared here on the podcast have been natural birth stories. So it's really great to hear her perspective on why she chose to have an epidural and what that experience was like for her. And then finally, we talk a lot about breastfeeding as well, because she talks a lot about the struggles that she's had with breastfeeding. Her little one, Rio, is 7 months now and she's still breastfeeding him, but she hasn't found it easy. And she's just recently published an article on Huffington Post, because she's a Huffington Post contributor. And so we talk a little bit about breastfeeding and how to overcome the challenges that you might have with breastfeeding, and she shares some really good insights to how you can cope better with the breastfeeding challenge. So there's loads of really great stuff in the chat I have with Shakira, so I really hope that you enjoy everything that she's got to share. So here's the time that I spoke to Shakira all about her pregnancy journey and so much more. Well, welcome Shakira to the Fear Free Childbirth podcast.
Thank you. Hi, good to be here.
Well, now we're going to be talking all about your pregnancy journey and your wonderful birth experience. So before we dive into all that, would you mind just sort of telling the listeners a little bit about who you are, Shakira, and a little bit about what you do?
Yes, so, okay, my name's Shakira Martin. In my working life, I go by Shakira Akabusi, which is my maiden name, and I'm a personal trainer and health and wellness sort of expert and kind of a commentator so I do a lot of journalism and writing articles about health and fitness, and primarily about fitness post-labour and how mums can get healthy and fit, and also with their child. A lot of the time women don't have time to get fit, so I do a lot of work about with women who have babies and trying to include their children in their workouts and how they can work out from home. And even, for example, something I'm building at the minute is how you use everyday objects like a washing basket or a cooking pot or anything like that to build a workout. So that's brilliant. Kind of what I'm focused on at the minute.
I think I'm going to have to get hold of this program when you finish with it, so do keep me posted.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send you the information. It's really good fun, and again, I'm getting quite a lot of women, saying, how can I find out more about it, and things like that. So that's all going really well.
Oh, brilliant. Well, we're going to share all the juicy details when we can here on the podcast. So, so thank you for sharing a little bit about you. So let me just ask you this before, just to kick things off. Just tell the listeners, the minute you found out that you were pregnant, that moment that you first found out that you were pregnant, how was that for you?
Amazing. I mean, I'm very much about sort of positive mental state, and not just a positive mental state, but always preparing for something. And I really wanted to have a baby, and we talked about it, and I really wanted to be pregnant. And straight away I was panicking. Oh my gosh, how am I going to get pregnant? And reading all the online things. How do you quickly get pregnant? What should I be eating? I'm completely, just when I decide to do something, I totally throw myself in. And then I actually did a vision board where I sort of, stuck, cut out images and words and, just anything that meant something to me, that were all about, I had healthy, I had mum, I had baby, I had, pregnancy, all these things meant something to me. And the month I did that was actually the month that I fell pregnant.
Wow.
And I tested early because I was so excited. And I looked at the test and I thought, oh, no, nothing's come up there. I'm not pregnant. And I got back into bed because it was early morning and my husband was away. And I got back into bed. And then 20 minutes later, I thought, I'm just going to check, just in case something happened. Quick, turn my bedside light on, and there were 2 lines on the test. And I jumped out of bed and I thought, oh my God, am I actually... And the first thing I did was run to the mirror then, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, you're pregnant. And I couldn't believe it. And then my husband was away for 2 days, and the one thing he'd said to me is, please just don't tell me when I'm away. I want to be with you. I don't want you to tell me over the phone. So for 2 days, I couldn't tell anybody, and I just walked around the whole time thinking, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I mean, I'm pregnant. It just was. I immediately felt really like I had to be responsible, and I'm on a journey to become a mother now, and was obviously really excited, but just couldn't share that with anybody. So for 2 days, I drove myself crazy, and then finally, I was able to say, which was obviously really exciting.
That must have been. I'm just imagining what that must have been like. That must have been an absolute nightmare. Having to stay quiet.
It was a nightmare. I didn't want to talk to anyone, so my mum would call me and say, oh, Shakira, how's your day? And I was like, yep, fine, yep, okay, gotta go. It was an absolute nightmare.
So once he found out, then you were able to sort of really just go to town with it. So how did that pregnancy unfold for you then?
I actually initially was great, and then as the pregnancy developed and went on, that was actually the part that I hadn't anticipated being difficult, that I actually had to work a lot on, because I'm very active and I'm very healthy, and when you're pregnant you do have to adapt what you do. And so I had to adapt a lot of things, and I just didn't quite have the energy to do a lot of things that I usually do. Like, I have a dog, and walking the dog, as the pregnancy went on, I got more tired, or walking hills, and all that type of stuff. So I kind of didn't struggle, but I kind of really had to work on the physical changes, and I hadn't spent any time really thinking about that. And like I'm sure some of your listeners are, I was petrified for labour, and that was my focus. The second I got pregnant, really happy, and then I thought, oh my gosh, now I've got to have it. Oh my God, I'm really fat. And then I just spent the whole 9 months, and it's kind of one of the reasons I really wanted to speak with you, is because I am so annoyed with myself now that I didn't really enjoy the pregnancy as much as I could have done. And everyone else said to me, enjoy your first pregnancy, because you'll never have another one like it, because the second time you've already got another child, so your focus is on your other child, and then you're pregnant. You still have to do everything. Enjoy this pregnancy and really enjoy being pregnant and feeling the kicks, and and really enjoy that. And I just couldn't, because I was just so petrified the whole time.
Oh, wow. So the fear of the actual birth was kind of sort of clouding your thoughts throughout most of your pregnancy?
Yeah, it did at the time. Yeah, it really did. It was a real focus of mine, because I'm terrified of everything. I mean, I am terrified of needles, and I ended up having the epidural, which I'll share with you later. But I literally thought, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? I didn't even know how I would, have the blood tests that you have and all that. But, and the second time I would be so relaxed about it, because I did have such a positive experience. And I know it's different for everybody. I know that labours are different and pregnancies are different, but I think, like I said at the beginning, I'm all about your mental state, and that's where I really messed myself over, because I then spent so much time mentally focused on this labour, rather than enjoying the moment and then creating a positive mental attitude towards labour. I didn't really so it's something that I didn't really then live by in that instant.
So how did you feel as you were approaching birth then? Were you tapping into any of the strategies or things that you usually do for positive mental attitude, or what were you doing to prepare for the birth, if anything?
Well, as it got closer and closer to the birth, and I'm sure lots of people would agree with this, the closer it gets, the more you just want to meet your baby. And when you can start to feel, not even just the kicks, but when you start to feel them, it's like a rolling sensation, when you feel the foot roll, and the more that happened, and right towards the end, then I really felt, I just really want to meet him, and I knew it was a boy. And I just was desperate to meet him, and then I really wanted to, hold him, and my protective instinct kicked in like before he was actually born, and I just wanted to already, protect him and care for him and all of that before he was even born. So then eventually that kind of took over, and in the last 3 or 4 weeks, that was my mental mindset. So at that stage I started to get over that, and I know this sounds very silly, but because I by that point had a few blood tests, and again I had such good experiences with them, and I'm so terrified of needles normally, that made me think, oh, hang on, if that's been okay, and I've just worked that up in my head, maybe it's not going to be, this disaster that I, feel that it's going to be and have heard that it can be, and blah, blah, blah. So, that then I think really helped me as well.
So when you were when you were terrified about the birth, what was it specifically that was freaking you out about the birth? Was there anything that was it all of it was just a big blur? Was there anything specific that was bothering you?
I just had in my head, I'm sure women who haven't had a baby but are pregnant will be thinking, wait, I don't understand how is that size head coming out of there? And that was...
That was exactly mine in my first pregnancy.
Yeah. And people were buying me, like, newborn clothes, and they were saying, oh, isn't it tiny? And I was looking at it thinking, but that is huge, and that I do understand how I'm going to get it out. So it was more that, really, that then freaked me out, you know.
So did you do any reading of pregnancy books or anything like that while you were pregnant?
No, I actually avoided that, and I was given loads, but I actually avoided it because I was so freaked out already, and I don't really think about, you know, if you online you can find a horror story about everything.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to see anything or hear anything. I didn't want to YouTube an epidural, and I just didn't want to do any of that. And actually I think that kind of helped me. And again, why I think what you're doing is so good is because you're actually speaking to people firsthand and getting, like you said, you know, getting the experiences straight from the mother, and you know, you're getting the story from that person's experience rather than on an online, you know, forum where someone's, you know, dramatizing something for, you know, or whatever. So yeah, I actually really avoided reading up on it.
Okay. So when it came to, I mean, just back to some of the other preparation stuff, I'm thinking, given your background in fitness, that you probably did a lot of physical preparation then maybe for the birth, did you?
Yes, I did. I did do a lot of that. And I'm really passionate about sort of pregnancy fitness and then post-pregnancy fitness. But when you're pregnant, it is really important to be fit and healthy. And labour is what it is you do need to have, you know, it is physically demanding. It's not scary and it's not painful, but it is a physical demand. And so to get your body physically in that position to cope with it, I really did do a lot of work on that, as you said. So, and again, why I felt calm towards the end, because I'd gone through all of that. I did lots of breathing, but I did lots and lots and lots of exercise running up to that, which then helped get me into a place where I felt I actually can be in control of the moment. I think that, to be honest, I think that was probably the biggest fear, worrying that I wouldn't be able to be in control of the situation. And if you are prepared in that way, you actually can be. And actually, I say I didn't read, which I didn't, but I did do an NCT course.
Okay.
So I did have a lot of information given to me in that, and it did really help having other women that were pregnant, you know, we're all within a month of each other, and just hearing their concerns and all talking about it, and then someone explaining to you what is going to happen when and why, you know, that again really, really did help.
So what kind of exercises did you do to prepare your body then?
Well, so again, it's really difficult because it's so specific to each individual. I'm a health and fitness trainer, so I had quite a high level of fitness, and I would definitely not advise someone who's never done fitness to, you know, go for a run at all. But so you've got to work with your fitness levels where they already are. And I had quite a high fitness level, so I was actually still teaching my classes, and I did some adaptations. I mean, I didn't lift any weights above my head, and you don't want to ever get really physically exhausted. You don't want to get out of breath or raise your body temperature or raise your blood pressure or anything like that. So I avoided that, but I was still teaching a lot of classes and personal training people, so I kept active in that way. But then like I said, I've got a dog, so I walked my dog every day, and you can still do some glute exercises, and you can still work on some body weight exercises. So I did a lot of that and working out at home things.
I remember I did a lot of squats just to get my thighs, because I thought if I'm going to be in that, the squatting is a good birthing position, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
And
exactly.
I used to do martial art that used a lot of squats, so I thought if I train that bit in me, at least I can hold that position for long without feeling like my leg's going to die. And I used it loads, actually, in my first birth.
Well, and I remember the midwife said to me when it got to the point of pushing, she said, okay. I said, how long does it take? I think I was really naive. I said, how long does it take? In my head, I thought 5-10 minutes. And she said, it can take about, it can take 3 hours, around 3 hours for a first-time mum. And I said, 3 hours? She said, yeah. And Rio was born within half an hour. And I think it was because I maintained such a healthy, active lifestyle. And, like I said, I worked a lot on glute work and a lot of body weight exercises. I think that really did help get me into a good position.
Okay, so now let's just fast forward now to, let's say, leading up to the birth. You're coming up to your due date. What was your due date?
Well, my due date was the 15th of January.
Okay.
And it was part of the reason we had named him Rio, and the reason we called him Rio was because his name means Rio de Janeiro means river of January, and then he was born on the 31st of December, so he kind of threw that up. But that was the plan, so my due date was on the 15th of January.
So you got a little bit of a cheeky surprise.
Yeah, exactly. He just made it into the 2014.
So how did it all kick off for you then? How did you? What was happening? How did you know that you were in labour? What was going on with you?
Well, this is the other thing. So everyone kept saying to me, because I had a couple of Braxton Hicks contractions, and everyone said, "Oh, trust me, when it's labour, you will know." And I had no idea. We were eating dinner, and I thought, "Oh, got a bit of a." I'm getting these cramps, and it felt just the same as my Braxton Hicks. And I thought, oh, never mind. I ate dinner, went upstairs, went to bed, and then the big giveaway was up because I had got up to go to the loo through the night a lot through my pregnancy, and I'd been up about 4 or 5 times, and every time I went to the loo, I was having slight, stomach cramp, and I thought, it's getting uncomfortable, and then I looked at my clock and I realised it was only 3 a.m. and I thought, hang on. I've been to the loo about 8 times and it's only 3 a.m. That is weird, because I thought it must have been like 6, 7 in the morning. And it was only 3 a.m. And that's when I then woke Tom and I said, Tom, I'm not sure if I'm having contractions. And he said, no, they said you would know, just go to sleep. And I thought, okay, so I laid there for about half an hour. I was lying there thinking, no, I think this might be contractions. And then again, I woke him up. I said, no, Tom, I think. So then, they tell you to time them. So, we timed them. They were all over the place. Some were, I was having some that were 3-minute gaps, some 6-minute gaps, then a 2-minute gap. Literally here, there, and everywhere. So Tom said, well, that can't be it. It can't be it. And I said, oh, okay, well, that can't be it then. Carried on having contractions. And then they did get slightly more intense. I thought, oh, well, Tom, if they're not contractions, then I don't really know what's going on, because it's a bit more than the Braxton Hicks I've had before. So I said, I really need to loo. So I went to the loo again, and by this time it was about 6 a.m. And then they talk about this mucus plug that you have. And as I went to the loo, that came out. And then that's when I knew, oh, okay, this is actually labour. But that was the first real giveaway.
So what happened from then on? Did they start getting a little bit more consistent, your contractions?
Yes, well, so then what happened was I had, luckily that day, on New Year's Eve, I had a midwife appointment. Anyway, so I called her, and it wasn't until 10, and I called her and said, look, I think I've gone into labour. Can I come in early? Because the hospital was a bit of a drive, so I said, can I just come in to see you? And she was round the corner, and, could you examine me and let me know? She said, oh, okay. So we put everything in the car just in case. Got in the car, went round, and she checked and she said, you're actually 4 centimetres dilated. You want to be going to hospital now? She said, that baby will be born in a few hours. And I thought, oh my God. So, okay, great. So we got straight in the car and went to hospital. And then on the way to the hospital, they started to get a little bit more intense. But again, I'd learned a bit about breathing and I felt very in control of what was going on. I didn't feel as panicked as I'd expected. So I thought, okay, and I did a lot of breathing in the car, and at that stage then, the excitement you do get a bit excited, because then you call your family, and we said, oh, yeah, Shakira's in labour, and so, then that kind of took over. And I remember they teach you a lot. We learned a lot about oxytocin, and that's kind of one of the hormones that you need that helps labour, and it's a happy hormone, and it's produced with a love and affection, and it's actually once the baby's born, that rush of exhilaration that you feel is a rush of oxytocin in your body. So they teach you a lot about, you want to, massaging the woman's feet, for example, when she's in labour is really good, because it helps produce oxytocin, which keeps her in a positive mind state, and it boosts labour, it keeps it going. But what counteracts it is adrenaline. So obviously the excitement that I then felt in the car when I got to the hospital, things had slowed down, but they had that is natural for it to slow down, because you do get this rush of excitement, and it can then suddenly the contractions are a bit further apart. And often they say it can have such a drastic effect that they send the person home again and say, right, you need to go home again and come back later, because they've just gone back a few steps. And they didn't send me home, but they did say, why don't you lie in the bath? And I was lucky enough in my hotel room, in my hospital room, they had a bath, so I was able to get in the bath. And I said straight away when I got there, I want to have the epidural. And again, I was told, one of the things that really freaked me out, I was told, they're really going to push you to not have the epidural. So if that is what you want, they're really going to tell you not to have it. So make sure you're really forceful. So I was panicking. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be told that I can't have it. I'm going to be told that I can't have it. But again, it just wasn't like that. They were so helpful, and I went in and I said, look, I really do want the epidural. They said, that's absolutely fine. We'll get someone along to your room, at some point in the next hour. Why don't you until then get in the bath? And I have to say, if the epidural isn't an option, or if it's something that people don't want to do, I would actually strongly consider a water birth next time, because getting into that bath was absolutely amazing. Because so what happened was, I got to the hospital, checked into the hospital, went into the room, and then I think we needed to move rooms or something, and during that time the contractions got a bit more intense. And I remember at that point I was then sort of crouched over, and I had like a bean bag there that they gave me, and I remember thinking, and I was squeezing my husband's hand. So at that point then, that I did recognise as a real contraction, because I could actually feel that. And then they said, why don't you get in the bath? And I got in the bath, and honestly that warm water was just, it was
bliss.
It was absolutely amazing. It was literally just, and I was lying in the bath, and I was just sloshing it over my stomach, and it was just so nice. I felt, really calm then. And then the anaesthetist came in, who was giving me the epidural, and she spoke to me while I was in the bath. And she said, yep, not a problem, we'll get that for you, And then I didn't actually I got to the hospital about 8, and I didn't have the epidural till about 10 or 11. And so I then got onto the bed, and actually the thing that shocked me the most out of the whole thing was when they spray your back with like a sterilising spray. But I hadn't expected it to be so cold, and it was so cold. That was the biggest shock of the whole labour, was that cold spray, because I just hadn't expected it. And then again, I had the epidural, and I was before so freaked out, and before I was doing it I was actually crying, because I was just so scared. I hate needles. I was just so scared, so I was crying, and it was absolutely fine. I had a really good anaesthetist. She was brilliant, but I think I assume now what they do is it almost numbs your back as they're doing it, so you don't feel. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to feel this big needle going in. I didn't. You just do not feel it. You just do not feel it. And I'd said to people, "Are you sure you can't? Are you sure?" And it feels exactly like someone is just pushing with their thumb on your back, and that's the feeling that it is. I don't know of your experience, but that's exactly how it feels. And as soon as that was in, I felt really good then, and I wasn't completely numb. I still again had a lot of control. And one thing I haven't mentioned is that I suffer quite badly from panic attacks and anxiety, and I was really worried. Oh gosh, am I going to get a panic attack if I'm completely numb? And I wasn't completely numb. Again, I did still have movement in my lower body. And I kept saying to my husband, could you keep rubbing my feet just so that I know that I can feel them? So he was just rubbing my feet or tickling my feet, and I could still feel, I did still have some feeling in my legs. And then labour then slowed down for me a little bit, and it took, I don't know where the time went, because it felt like 3 minutes, but apparently the day passed, and it wasn't until about 5 o'clock then in the evening when they said to me, you are in a position to push. And they said, we usually give women because they said you're fully dilated and everything's ready, and they said we usually give women a bit of time now, just to prepare. And I said, I feel like I want to push now. I have that instinct that I want to push. And they said, okay, not a problem. And it was just one midwife. My husband was there, and actually my mum and sister were there. And as I said, I pushed, and I've got quite a strong core, and that must have really helped, and that was all great. The only thing I then really felt was I could feel the crowning of the head, and you can feel the stretching, and I said to my midwife, I said, look, I can't mentally make myself push, through that. And she said, okay, not a problem. She said, we can get another injection and numb down there. And she said, but it's going to take a bit of time to prepare that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run warm water. I'm just going to get, some hot water in a jug. And I'm just going to pour it over, everything down there just to help you relax. And I said, okay, that's fine. And she just poured the warm water and he just flew out. And I think it must, which is why I say I would really consider a water birth, or at least if you are having the epidural or if you are having just a normal birth, if that's an option to ask someone to pour warm water, that was, it must just, one, relaxed everything, but it also really took away the pressure that I was feeling. And she just poured the warm water, physically the pressure, she poured the warm water and my son was born. And I was actually listening to music. I had headphones in, and I'd said, and I was crying just before I was about to push. I was crying, and everyone was saying, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" And I said, "I am just so excited that I'm about to meet him. I am so excited." And it just fueled the fire. I just wanted him out, and I just wanted to hold him so much. And then that was it.
Wow. So what happened when he popped out then? What happened then?
I think it shocked the midwife as well. I don't think she was expecting it, because he literally she poured the water and he just flew out. She sort of caught him, and straight away I said I wanted to have him on my chest. So she straight away passed him up to me, and he was lying on my chest, and I had a t-shirt on, and I wanted to get the t-shirt off, but it was caught in with the epidural, and I had like a drip in my arm, so it was caught up, and I just said, just cut the t-shirt. I said, I don't care about the t-shirt. So they just ripped the t-shirt, and then I just had him on my chest. It was just, and I looked at my mum, and I said, my mum almost fainted. She just said she said it's the weirdest thing to see your child have a child. She was not prepared. And my husband was there, and my sister, and I just kept looking at them saying, isn't he amazing? Isn't he amazing? Isn't he amazing? And he was, obviously, to me, just amazing. And it wasn't, I then felt really bad after, because everyone had said to me, you're going to feel this massive love, and you never felt anything like it. And it wasn't so much, oh my gosh, I feel this massive rush of love. It was just, I felt so protective over him. The protection that I felt was I hadn't expected, and it was just seeing these arms and legs and these little bum cheeks that we built, that I just could not believe that he was there. And that was incredible. That was incredible.
Amazing.
That was a really special time. Yeah,
and it continues to be, doesn't it? Even now, when my little one's 10 months, and I just look at little arms and the little cheeks. Oh, geez, I just eat her. I know.
Well, I said to my mum yesterday at dinner, I said, it's actually, because for me personally, the love grew. Like, I obviously loved him straight away, and as I said, the protective urge was there straight away. But now he's now 7.5 months, and when I put him to bed, I sit there, and as I'm putting him to bed, I think, oh, please go to sleep, I'm so tired. And the second I leave his room, he's asleep. One, I miss him, and two, I think, God, the amount that I love him is actually quite scary. And if anything was to make me think, oh, I don't know if I want another one, and I do want another one, but if anything would make me think, oh, I'm not sure, it's because I love him so much that it's really quite overwhelming. And it just, every day, it just really does take me back to think, oh my gosh, I really love you more than anything ever. You're just amazing.
Yeah, totally. I know it is completely awe-inspiring, amazing, just overwhelming, all of those things. It's quite mad. Now, I just want to take you back to, I want to understand a little bit more about why you chose to do an epidural. What is it? Because given you're completely freaking out about injections, that seems like a really interesting decision. Do you want to shed a bit of light around that? I think for me, one of the main deciding factors was that I wanted to enjoy the experience. And I know people who have had really positive experiences with a normal birth, a water birth, all sorts of things, and they've gone on to have many children and they say it's absolutely fine. I was really scared of labour and I wanted to enjoy the moment. So I made that decision because I wanted to be in control. I didn't want to be worried about, this contraction really hurt, and so what if in 10 minutes time it's even more? I didn't want that. I didn't want to be the way that I'd freaked myself out through the labour. I didn't want that to continue through the pregnancy. I didn't want that to continue through labour. So that was one of my main reasons for wanting it. No, so it sounds like you just had an amazing experience with the epidural as well. You sound like you were really connected to that birth experience, and it just sounds like you feel so positively about the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely 100%. And I left, we left the hospital the next day, and my friends came over and they said, we can't believe, and I actually went for a walk 2 days later, and they said, I can't believe that you don't seem like you've had a baby. And I said, to be honest, I was for weeks and weeks and weeks, I was actually so buzzing on how positive an experience I had, and I was so pleased. And now thinking about having another one, which I do want to do at some stage, I understand that that all labours are different, but it just knowing that you can be in control of the situation. And even if I wasn't able to have the epidural, like I said, the experience that I had with the water, getting in the bath, and then the water at the end, that it was just to know that you do have options, you do have choices, and you are still in a position and in a mental state to really to like I said, be in control, really. A lot of people had said to me, when people are in labour, they say all these crazy things, or they're totally out of it, or all that type of thing. Did you know that you'll be totally out of it? You won't even know what you're saying. And I was thinking, oh my God, and I hate that. Like I said, with my panic attacks and anxiety, I hate not being able to at least be, mentally in the moment and be able to understand what's happening. So I was terrified. Oh my gosh, am I going to be, totally in a different place in my mind? And I wasn't. I was actually really there, and I was present, and I was able to really enjoy the whole experience. And it was just amazing. It really was. Now, now, you went for a walk 2 days later, which sounds amazing. So I'm sure your fitness regime during your pregnancy had a lot to do with that. But did you do? Yeah. Is there anything else that you did? Like, when did you start to exercise? When did you start? Did you do any pelvic floor exercises, or I don't know? Afterwards. So when did you start all that stuff? Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm developing at the minute. You have a 6-week check, as you know, where you're cleared for exercise. So I waited until my 6 weeks before I went back to a gym and worked on exercises in that way. So the muscles around your joints all relax, a lot through pregnancy, so that to prepare for labour and prepare for birth. So you do have to wait for that before you can work on a lot of resistance exercises. But you can, again, I started walking within 2 days. I did go for a jog. I wouldn't advise that to everybody, but I did go for a jog after 2.5 weeks. I think I did my first one. It was only 10 minutes, but that was really good just to get me back into the swing of things. And it was really slow paced, but I really enjoyed that. And then, like you said, I did a lot of pelvic floor exercises. I did a lot of, I worked a little bit then on stability exercises again, just to re-engage my core. But mainly it was about mentally getting back into a frame of mind of, okay, I want to get back into a healthy lifestyle, and I've got a baby, so I wanted to include that in it. So my whole the fitness concept that I've now built and developed and will be sort of putting out there next year is all about. It starts with
with your mental attitude. And it all starts with mindfulness, and there's yoga included in that, and stretching and everything like that. And it then will go on to physical exercise. And I know that a lot of pregnant women want to fat burn and get back to their pre-pregnancy physique, and that's all well and good, but it does, it takes a bit of time. But I think it's really important to get yourself mentally in that headspace of, okay, I want to live a fit and healthy lifestyle, and you do now have a baby that you need to include in that. So there's diet plans out there and fitness plans out there all the time, but a lot of them don't consider a child. So what I'm really trying to do is make it specifically for mothers, with young children or 2 children or 5 children, however many you want to have, you've got. So I've kind of got all those details together, and that's my own personal experience and experiences of others has all come together for me to build this concept that I've come up with.
When I try doing some exercise with my little one, and I'd be on the floor trying to do some crunches or something, and she's just far more interested. She might be playing with something, and then the minute I'm lying on the floor next to her, she wants to climb on me, and so next thing I'm trying to do crunches with her, I'm sitting on my face or something.
Exactly. Well, but that's exactly what I do. I mean, I use Rio in all of my exercise, so he's sort of become my dumbbell.
Oh,
so so I literally do use him in the exercises. As I'm squatting, I hold him to my chest, or I lift him over my head in a shoulder press, or so he is part of my workout program. But I would think that for ladies who have just had a baby and are in the first few weeks, your diet and your healthy eating, not a diet, your diet, healthy eating is one of the most important things that you can do. Really.
So thinking about just back to the post-birth period, then it sounds, with your positive birth experience, how was the post-birth period for you? Did you experience any sort of anxieties or anything, or did you sort of have this kind of post-birth high, this rush? What was that emotional journey like for you?
I had, like I said, I was buzzing for weeks off the experience I had, and obviously off my son, just having a baby, which was amazing. I am still breastfeeding at the moment, and I actually, in the first week or so, it was easy. I was really lucky. He attached within 10 minutes, and he feeds really well, always has done. All of that is brilliant. But emotionally and mentally, I wasn't prepared for the demanding nature of that. And so, again, that's taken a lot of work for me mentally to get my head in the space with the breastfeeding. And I really struggled with that. And I felt a lot of pressure to breastfeed, which, as I said, I have done it. And I'm actually in the middle of writing an article about exactly that and where this pressure kind of comes from. But that did take a lot of my mental space, my positive energy was put into trying to get my head around that, because I wanted to breastfeed, and he fed a lot all the time, often and for a long time. And so I found that then eventually became such an overriding factor. And actually my article is about how that can kind of be a real shame if you have been so excited to be a parent, and then something like this, if I had been prepared for it, it wouldn't have been such a problem, but it came out of nowhere, and I didn't feel as though I'd got a lot of honest, realistic views on how breastfeeding actually is. I'd heard a lot of, it's great, it creates this bond between mother and baby and blah, 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 and it is great, and there are really great aspects to it, and obviously the health benefits are brilliant for the child, but mentally for the mother, it is hard work, and no one had sat me down and said, look, it is hard work, and there will be nights where it's 3 a.m. and he's been feeding for an hour and a half, and you put him down, and 40 minutes later he's screaming again, and you've got to go, and no one had really prepared me for that. And now that I'm prepared, next time, I don't think it would be so drastic. I think I would enjoy the whole thing a lot more, but at the time I hadn't really taken that into account.
So, if there's a pregnant mum listening to this now, what do you wish you had been told to prepare better?
Just the reality of it. I think the reality. There are times when it is hard. There are times when breastfeeding is really difficult. Whether it's emotionally, obviously there can be physical things where if the baby doesn't latch on or if they've got a tongue tie and all of that. I didn't have those issues, but mentally, if you do decide to on-demand feed as well, which is what was really sort of pushed at me, and it does feel, at times, I felt as though he was demanding it. I didn't feel like, Mum, can I play a bit? I felt like he was going, now, and I just wasn't prepared. So I think, one, just to understand that it can be difficult. There are difficult times, but you're not alone in thinking that, and it doesn't make you a bad mother, because I sat there and I was crying and I was thinking, oh my gosh, does it make me a bad mum that I'm so fed up with it? It's 3 a.m, I don't want to be doing it and I'm tired, but I feel guilty for all those things because he's a baby. But it's not, you don't need to feel guilty, it's fine, you're a mum. And what then eventually really helped me was one of the breastfeeding workers. She said to me, look, you do have a choice. You do have a choice, because I felt so pressured into it. I felt as though I didn't have a choice to use formula. I felt like, no, he's latching on. So what good excuse have I got? I can't say, oh, it was painful, or oh, he wasn't interested, or oh, he wasn't latching on. Everything's fine. I just, and as the second she said to me, you have got a choice. The second I knew I had a choice, I thought, actually, now I'm doing this because I want to do it. And from then on, it was fine. The second I knew that, okay, if I want to, I can use formula, and it doesn't make me any less of a mother than any breastfeeding mum out there if I decide to use formula. That's absolutely fine. And then I felt I didn't need it, because by that point, I'd got myself into a space where actually I was making the decision to do it rather than feeling pressured into it.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. When I was breastfeeding with my first one, I felt that as well, just those not late nights, all the night, and having to get up. And I don't know, I just got addicted to my smartphone in those times, because at least I had something to do. And I just kept thinking, how did mums do it before smartphones? I know. Just sitting there in the dark on their own. What can you do? You can't,
I'm the exact same. I actually started on audio tapes. So Harry Potter audio, I'd have that in headphones, in my ears, breastfeeding for hours, and then I'd wake up and think, oh, at least I'm about to find out what happened with Hagrid or whatever, and so I started listening to audio tapes, breastfeeding. But again, smartphone, I know, and and that's got its own, that's a whole nother category. Having a smartphone and a baby is really try hard,
complete godsend. I think I spent a fortune on eBay in my first few weeks when I was breastfeeding, buying all these lovely little newborn outfits. Oh, look how cute that is! Yeah, I'll have that. Well, listen, Shakira, it's been absolutely fabulous listening to your experience. Now, you talked a lot about all the stuff that you've been preparing. So just tell us a little bit more about where we can find out more about this stuff that you're developing, what you're up to, your classes, all that kind of stuff. Where can people find out about you online?
Yeah, great. So on Twitter, I'm Shakira Akabusi, and on Instagram, I'm Shakira.Akabusi. You'll find all my updates there, and I'm constantly posting little workout videos that I'm doing with Rio. I'm posting healthy recipes that are good for mum and baby, and the actual fitness program that I've now just finalised putting together will come out next year in 2016 is when I'm going to launch that, and it's specifically for mum and babies, and it's going to be found at stronglikemum.com.
Wow, okay.
And it's all going to be about. There'll be a bit of information about how to prepare and be healthy and fit through pregnancy, but then again, after pregnancy, how to regain your figure and just regain a sense of self, be mentally in a good space. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of healthy recipes that you can cook for you and your little one when they get to that age, so that you're not having to cook separately for you a healthy meal and then separately for the rest of the family. It's all going to be something that should work really easily for a mother, and it's all very time effective. The workouts are all short 15-minute workouts. Just a little secret about it, I'll just tell you a little bit, that it's basically 3 15-minute workouts. You can include your baby within those workouts. One of those 15 minutes is about mindfulness and yoga, which is the most important aspect of this program, especially for mothers, because it is a tough job being a mum, and it is hectic and it gets busy. And I feel if I can make you take 15 minutes, just 3 days a week, 15 minutes, for yourself to mentally get yourself into a good place, it will change the way that you can sustain. It'll help you sustain a healthy lifestyle.
Fabulous. Well, I'm going to have all those links on the podcast show notes that you'll be able to find at fearfreechildbirth.com/Shakira. So all the links will be there so that people can find out where to follow you on Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff.
Perfect.
So thank you so much
for having me on.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
It.
It's been fabulous. I hope you enjoyed listening to Shakira sharing her journey and also talking about breastfeeding and what it was like having an epidural for her birth. Now, as I mentioned during the chat, you can find out all the links about where you can find Shakira on the podcast show notes at fearfreechildbirth.com/Shakira. And there's links to her Instagram feed where she shares videos of her doing workouts with baby Rio. And there's her Twitter name there as well, so you can find links. I think she's got a lot of videos on there. And of course, her YouTube channel where she's got different videos again. All really great stuff for the mum trying to get her figure back with her little baby. I've checked out these videos. They're brilliant. And her baby Rio is just adorable. And especially when she's doing crunches and then lifts him up and gives him a nice little kiss. It's brilliant. And I only wish I could do that with my little one now, except she's quite heavy and I don't think I'd actually be able to lift her or do any crunches whatsoever. So you've really got to take advantage of these kind of exercises while your little ones are small enough for you to be able to lift like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show and I'll be back again next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. You've just been listening to Alexia Leachman from the Fear Free Childbirth podcast. If you enjoyed the show, she'd really love it if you left a review on iTunes or Stitcher or shared it with a friend. And don't forget, to get a free chapter from her book, head over to fearfreechildbirth.com to get your copy, as well as finding other episodes in this podcast and more about how Alexia can help you with pregnancy and birth preparation coaching. Until next time.